Hello everybody, and welcome back to Occult Perspectives. I hope you are all doing very well. In today's video, I'm going to switch gears once again, go in a completely different direction. We're still gonna stick to the esoteric stuff as always, but for this video, I wanted to cover The Legend of Zelda, particularly the Ocarina of Time, that game. They all have a lot of occult symbolism in them, but I think the Ocarina of Time probably has more than any other game, and it is the most popular Zelda game, one of the most popular games of all time. Really, it's ranked #1 on a lot of the game lists. Yeah, it was the first Zelda game to have like real 3D graphics, where you're moving the character around. You can move Link in pretty much any direction. Every Zelda game before that was like a 2D, more of like a side-scroller kind of game. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. This is not going to be a super organized video because I had just decided to do a Zelda video today. I hadn't compiled any notes beforehand or anything. So let's start with the title itself, the Ocarina of Time. The ocarina is an instrument, and Link, who is the main character, it's not actually Zelda. A lot of people might think the main character is Zelda, but Zelda is actually the princess, and you are the hero, Link, the hero of time. And as you'll learn later on in these videos, if you follow this particular Zelda series as I continue to do them and get to them, what you'll see is time is a reoccurring theme. And we know that one of the gods of time, the main one that I know of is Kronos, is often, he would be equated with Saturn. And what's interesting is a lot of companies actually use Kronos in their time clock, but it's spelled differently because it's normally spelled Chronos, but they spell it Kronos, so a little bit of difference there. Same idea though, they're using the same symbolism and stuff to get you to, comply with the way it's all run and contractually set up and everything. That's a whole different subject though. I just wanted to tie in the Kronos idea or the Father Time idea with this Ocarina of Time game. The Ocarina of Time, as we said, is an instrument which Link uses, and even Link's name is symbolic. Link, he is the hero that links everything together. And I actually had somebody once, he's a Jehovah's Witness, he told me that my name, Tyler, is actually a similar meaning. I'm supposed to bring people together and bring things together, tie things together. That's one of my dharmic goals. Not really goals, but jobs here in this lifetime, is to help bring energies together and reconcile dualities and such. See that bridges can really be built, and we can then branch out further and be stronger rather than having all these broken bridges, burnt bridges, and everyone's separated in their little boxes and everything. But that's all going to change with the New Age and such. Okay. So I pulled up on my video here, got some sound tones going on at the moment, but I also pulled up a video of, if you can see that there, if that chooses to play. Looks like something froze. There we go. Okay. So this is the title screen right here, and if you recognize the logo, it's a sword and shield. There we go, right there. See, the Triforce is the main symbol. It's the 3 yellow triangles on the shield. There's a red phoenix right there, and there's one singular downward triangle below the phoenix. So that's represents the element of water, and these 3 could represent, the trifold fire element. And the Master Sword is moving across the shield. So there's some symbology there. And of course the different colors could mean different things. Red's usually symbolic of zeal. The yellow could be spirit or air. The red's also fire, and then the element of water. So they're kind of adding a lot of components in the symbology right there. Another thing I wanted to mention, though, about the Triforce itself, which really didn't occur to me until today, there is, in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, which is a great, great book by Manly P. Hall. Would love to get into this at some point. It's one of the best occult books ever written, in my opinion. I am memorizing a chapter in that book, actually, that I can give as a lecture, and it's the chapter in there on the tree of the Sephiroth. And it talks about the tree of life. I've used this diagram in a whole bunch of my videos. There's also other diagrams on the back here which show other correspondences. But the three, it's basically split into 3 sections. I think it's roughly like 1, 2, 3. I may not be mapping it right, but there's like 3 trinities, or faces as they term them, in the Sephirotic tree of life. And these three emanations, or these 3 spheres, could be symbolic of the threefold nature of the Triforce. That was just something that had popped in my mind earlier. So you've got three trinities, which creates, different triangles. There's a downward pointing triangle right there. You've got that one. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of Kabbalistic correspondences is basically what I'm getting at with the symbology of the Legend of Zelda. Moving on. And I have some notes here too, because I did do some videos on Facebook a really long time ago on occult symbolism in the Ocarina of Time. Those videos are quite hard to find now when I search for them, but I do have the original notes. Handwriting's a little sloppy, so it might take me a minute to get through some of this stuff. The whole theme of, the knight, he's got the sword and shield, he's the hero of time. Knighthood's just a common theme, especially in medieval themed games and stuff. It all goes back to the Knights Templar and other, more ancient knighthoods even than that. That's just one of the most famous ones. Okay. And as we said on the shield, there's a symbol of the phoenix, which is an emblem of resurrection, and it's above. What's interesting is it's rising. If you look at that Triforce, it's above the upside down triangle, which represents water. So it's the phoenix like rising up from the water. I think that's kind of, there's something there to that. The phoenix could represent Link himself, possibly. The 3 upright triangles also represent the 3 golden goddesses. Din, Nehru, and Feror, which we'll learn more about that. And that's basically the creation story, is that these 3 goddesses descended out of the chaos, or which would Kabbalistically be, I would think, the Ein Sof, or which is like the no thing. It's beyond even creation itself. It's really hard for us to really conceive of what no thing is. Our minds don't really understand, because there's always been something there. The 3 golden triangles are wisdom, strength, and courage. And then, as we were talking in the last video, the Morals and Dogma Part 2, excuse me, we were talking about the 3 pillars and how they equate to the officers of the Masonic Lodge and a lot of other things. Wisdom, strength, and beauty, though, is what it's similar to, truly, and that's also in the Kabbalistic. Let me just go ahead and pull that. Hopefully find that chapter really quick. And just read it straight from here. Page 385. Okay. The 3 columns, mercy on the right, severity on the left, and between them, mildness as the reconciling power. The columns may also be said to represent wisdom, strength, and beauty, which form the triune support of the universe. For it is written that the foundation of all things is the 3. Okay, so yep, there's a lot of correlations going on between the Triforces, the triangles of the Triforce, and this threefold concept, which we talked about in the last video that I posted. We talked about the symbolism the symbolism of the colors. Red is zeal, blue is water or emotions. And this could, I did make a note here. I don't think that really applies to this situation though. That was just an extra thing I had added. Okay. So, one of the first artifacts you find in the story, that you start out in the Kokiri forest, and the great Deku tree is the guardian of this forest. And how the story starts out is Navy. I'm not sure if it's Navy or Navi, because I think it's short for navigation, so it might be Navy, Navi. I've always said Navy, but that's the guardian fairy that is assigned to Link, because he didn't have a guardian fairy before. All the other kids in the forest have one, but he's special. He doesn't have one until the Great Deku Tree sends Navy to his side, and Navy kind of, tells him that, hey, you were picked to be a hero and to save the world, essentially. And he, Link's, he's really happy, and his friend Sarah, which is one of the other characters, she ends up being a sage later in the game. We'll end up talking about her, but she's super happy for him. But the Deku Tree said, bring Link to me. I need to talk to him, basically. And you cannot gain passage through this. There's like I don't want to say hallway. I don't know what it is. It's like this little tunnel, essentially, that leads from where all the houses are in Kokiri Forest back to where the Great Deku Tree is. Mido's guarding that, and Mido requests that, or really requires that you find a sword and a shield, which you're going to need anyway. You end up getting the sword and shield, getting past him. He's kind of a little bugger. He's one of the more annoying characters. We'll talk a little bit more about him later, maybe even. But you go past him, you talk to the Great Deku Tree, you find out that the Deku Tree essentially needs you to go inside and rid him of this curse. And inside, you end up fighting this forest monster. That would be my cat at the door. I think he wants in. Yep. As long as you're a good cat, you can stay in, Mr. Xavier. But anyway, once you're in the Deku Tree, you talk to the Deku Tree. He said that he's basically, you're saving him of this curse. You go in, you destroy the monster, you get the first spiritual stone, and we'll talk about the uses of the spiritual stones later on. It's the Kokiri's Emerald, and that's the first stone that you get. This green, of course, the green of the children of the forest, and the forest itself is symbolic of the heart chakra. The forest children are pretty innocent, they don't really, they're not corrupted, like the adults of the outside world. Like, really, it would be equated to kind of like the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, and then like the men that live in Rohan and Gondor and all the other cities. Like, the Kokiri Forest is pretty much like the Shire. It's kind of the same concept. Let's see here. The emerald, the Kokiri's Emerald, you get that. We'll talk more about that later. But then once you receive this emerald, you find out that the Deku Tree was really cursed all along, and he was doomed before you even began your quest and went inside the tree to try to cleanse him out. He ends up dying, but right before he dies, he tells you about Ganondorf, which is the villain of the whole game, and we'll definitely be talking a lot about him, because there's a lot of interesting, like, darker occult aspects that Ganondorf has, and he ends up wielding the Triforce of Power, as you find out. So, yeah, he would empower, of course, or severity, Mars, the god of war. I guess it could be a little symbolic of maybe this pillar, or, the darker polarity, or the Sephiroth Gabura, which is associated with Mars and war, that power aspect, strength, physical strength, vitality, and spiritual strength. All right. Oh, yeah. Before I go on to, there's a lot of, wanted to talk real quick about the power of stones, because as we go along, in this game, and Link collects these spiritual stones. We know that stones have many uses. You know, like rose quartz is good for love. There's stones that are good for cleansing negative energies. Others that are good for attracting things to you, healing your body and such. And so yeah, these stones, they have magical properties in this game, and that's just kind of a common theme in a lot of video games as you collect like magical artifacts and such. And this is not an exception with Ocarina of Time. It's full of cool weapons and artifacts and such. But the whole stone concept, one stone in particular that's kind of cool that has a lot of magical properties is Moldavite, and that happens to be a green stone as well. It actually comes from an asteroid that hit Earth like a really long time ago, broke into a whole bunch of shards or whatever, and then those stones, you can buy them online, but they come from this original crater, from what I understand. So they really come from another, some other planet or something. I don't know if they come from another galaxy per se, or if it's all within the Milky Way. I would assume it was all within the Milky Way, because the Milky Way is pretty large in and of itself. But they're powerful. The Moldavite is powerful manifestation stones. They're really good for manifesting your desires, but you want to be careful with them. They're extra powerful. So that's just one example of a magical stone, in real life. The play on words of Hyrule is interesting, like High Rule, H-I-G-H, instead of H-Y-R-U-L-E, as Hyrule is spelled in the game. Ruling from a high place, I guess, and as we're, ruling yourself, Kabbalistically, we learn to learn the correspondences on the Tree of Life, as well as in the higher realms, and bring those down to Earth to manifest a better Earth here in the physical plane. The Deku Tree has helped in keeping the profane outside the forest and maintaining order. Interesting note I put here too, that Link would need wisdom and courage while he is in the Deku Tree, fighting the boss, that first boss, which is called Goma or Gama. I think it's G-H-O-M-A. Link was given not Navy, a guardian fairy. Navy is symbolic of navigation for internal qualities, courage and fortitude. These are definitely qualities for Link. One of the things that the Deku Tree says in the beginning of the game to Link, when he's talking to the tree, is, "Thy slumber these past moons must have been restless and full of nightmares." Link is sensitive to the moons. He makes a mention of Link being sensitive to the moons. He has restless nights, so there's already obvious occult references to like the phases of the moon, and Link being really in touch. He's just very alert and awake. And as we learn later on, Link, there's a reason why Link didn't have a guardian fairy, and he's very different from the other children of the forest. The Deku Tree is very aware of Link's destiny, as we said before, to save Hyrule. One of the quotes that the Deku Tree says to Link is, "Thou hast verily demonstrated thy courage." A curse was placed on the Great Deku Tree, so this is some kind of like dark magic sorcery that Ganondorf put on the Deku Tree to basically kill him. So it's really, malevolent stuff. Quote from the Deku Tree: "Vile sorceress powers." And Ganondorf was in search for the Sacred Realm, which we'll learn more about the Sacred Realm later on. And a divine relic, which is the Triforce, that contains the essence of the gods. And the Deku Tree starts to go in a little bit into the story, the creation story of Zelda. Before time and space began, 3 golden goddesses, wisdom, strength, and beauty. Din with strength. Din represents strength and like more primal, raw energy. Created the land. Nehru is the wisdom. Nehru is represented by blue. Din is red. And Nehru is the wisdom, the goddess of wisdom, giving spirit of law to the earth. So really the spirit of the world is created by Nehru. And then Din is the one who creates the physical, like all of creation. I'm sorry, not Din. Feror, which for some reason I did not write Feror down here, but I believe that Feror created all of the beings to uphold the law, which Nehru created, wisdom, and gave the spirit of law to the earth. So you've got this threefold goddess kind of thing going on. And the Deku Tree goes on to say, evil cannot be allowed to touch such sacredness. And when Ganondorf does attempt to touch the Triforce, which we'll get into later on, something happens because he is corrupt. He's not unified in his thoughts, words, and actions, his mind, body, and spirit. And then as you exit the woods after the Deku Tree dies, Mido's kind of profane. He doesn't really know what's going on. There's a lot more to the story, and a common theme in any movies and such is a lot of the times the hero is played out to be like, maybe it's a perspective that they've done something wrong, but they know the bigger picture. Like the Deku Tree knew he was going to die already, so it makes Link look like a bad guy, but really he's the hero. And this kind of whole martyr mentality of, people may not understand, the path you're on. If you're one who is truly on the path, they might mock you, they might not understand, but remember that Source is always with you, so it doesn't really matter. Link is divinely ordained to save the world, so he's going to save the world. Like, nobody's going to get in his way, especially no little Mido. So, yeah, that's not going to happen. I wrote here, he represents the profane, not understanding why the Great Deku Tree is dead, and he blames it on Link. Zelda is the Princess of Destiny. Okay. Sarah, as you try to leave the forest after this encounter with Mido, she gives you her Ocarina so that you're able to play songs, which is kind of cool. And then she always knew that Link was different, because as Link leaves the woods, most of the Kokiri think he's going to die, but of course he doesn't end up dying. And you'll find out why. I'll go over that. I'm not going to explain that just yet. But she knew he was always different, that he would always leave the forest, she mentions. So that kind of covers everything up until the part where Link leaves the forest at the beginning of the game. I'm going to go ahead and pull the camera over here again real quick and pull up some of this gameplay footage real quick. Looks like I might have to, minimize it again real quick. There we go. So this is like the title page. This whole part right here kind of explains the story, summarizing the Deku children, or the Kokiri. This is Link's dream that he has. We were talking about, he's really susceptible to the moon phases and visions. This is Navy and her conversation with the Deku Tree. The Deku Tree is basically like, hey, I'm sending you to go, for you to go tell this boy that he's, basically destined to save Hyrule. So she flies to his house. She wakes him up, lazy boy, it's time to go save the world kind of deal. This is where Link goes and talks to the tree. As we were saying before, he has been cursed, needs you to break the curse. You go into the Deku Tree, you beat the boss. This little part's afterwards. This is where he starts to explain who Ganondorf is. This evil man ceaselessly uses his vile sorcerer's powers, etc., etc. And then this is the creation story. There's Nehru. Feror is the green goddess. And there's Din, which is actually looks kind of... That was Din and almost the pink kind of light there, which really is supposed to be more red. Yeah, you get the idea. And they three all... The Triforce was created when the three goddesses left the world together. So here it kind of shows them all like merging into one, and the place where they leave that realm is like where the Triforce was left. So when these three goddesses ascend into the higher realms, it'll explain it here. There they go. Boom, they collide. And three goddesses, their labor's completed. If you're a Mason, that should be, that should really click for you. The sacred triangles remain at the point where the goddesses left the world. The triangles are the basis of the world's providence. That should sound familiar too if you're a Mason. There's the Kokiri's emerald that the tree gives you. It was just there a second ago. Oh yeah, it's really bright and shining green. There we go. Sorry, my window's open in the background too. It's totally, and here the Deku tree starts to die. So it's a little hard to see on the computer screen there, but it got all dark. And this is when you're leaving the woods, and Sarah ends up giving you the Ocarina. And then, yeah, basically, there you're holding it. Link ends up leaving the woods. And right as you leave the woods, this is probably the last thing I'll cover before I wrap up this video. But as soon as you leave the woods, you talk to Kapora Gabora, I think is how you say his name. He's the owl, anyway, in the game. And we'll probably pick up talking about him a little bit when we start the next video. Yeah, Kapora Gabora. But he's basically, he ends up being one of the sages later in the game you learn on. And in other Zelda games, he's kind of, he's a man, like he's a sage, but he manifests in the physical world. Anytime he comes to Hyrule, you'll realize he's this owl form. Well, actually, I don't think you really know that he is the owl. I don't know if it actually mentions that in the game itself, but that is extra lore. Like Rauru the Sage really is the owl. If you look a little bit into the lore, and I think even maybe the pattern on the owls around his feathers and stuff. And an interesting note I put in here too is when when he turns his head upside down in the game and talks to you, he's got like a face on his feathers, so that's kind of cool. The owl, as we know, is symbolic of wisdom. The darker side to the symbolism of the owl is Moloch from the Bible. And Moloch, you can look up a little bit on him. There's still places, even in America, where he is revered. There are rituals that are based around the deity Moloch. But from what I understand, he was like an ancient, like Canaanite type deity, and he's pretty evil. They say in the Bible that people would sacrifice their children to this god, and if that's a literal thing, that's really messed up. Sometimes the Bible, they're talking more symbolism, so it's hard to tell, but I just think Moloch's kind of just really dark energy associated with that deity. I mean, if it eats children and stuff, and women used to sacrifice their babies to this deity, sounds like bad news to me. And then there's a little bit more I want to talk about this sage, Rauru, I think is how you say it, or this Kapora Gabora owl. These things I'll talk about in the next video. So I hope you all are taking care. Got a busy couple days coming up, so it might be a minute before I post another video. But in the meantime, take care. I love you all. Like my videos, please subscribe. Hit the little bell if you want to see when new videos come up. Take care.